Hi everyone. So last night I was listening to YouTube and there was a man describing his out-of-body experiences and his near-death experience. He had an horrendous physical medical history. He had serious heart issues. He had a bypass operation. He had had a number of what's called ablations because of serious irregularity of his heart. Rapid heartbeats, irregularity that made it almost impossible for him to walk. And so for a period of almost 15 or 20 years, I think he said, he was pretty much of an invalid. Couldn't really walk around, couldn't do the sports that he loved. But during those times, he had had at least 3 out-of-body experiences. Not surprising. With that kind of history, who would want to be inside that body? And then, of course, he had, in the last year, he had this near-death experience. Now, people often ask me about this, like, do I think they're real? Now, it's interesting because, of course, it's subjective. And, of course, it's real to the people. In fact, most of them describe these experiences as being more real than anything else they've experienced. So more real, and yet we kind of dismiss their experience, which is interesting to me because I remember having a conversation once with a German mathematician. He had written a number of books on mathematics. And he said to me when we were having this conversation, he said, Bernard, what you've just said has nothing to do with science. And I said, Hans, that was his name, nice German name. I said, Hans, if your relationship with your wife depended on science, you wouldn't be able to have one. And he looked at me like that was the first time he'd ever thought about that. The fact is, he said, yeah, you're right. His relationship with his wife is a whole subjective, and he was talking about the objective world. And I kept reminding him that actually the subjective is more real than the objective. And he hadn't really thought about that. And I think most people don't really think about that the subjective world is real. It's only that science makes a division. For a good reason, because science can't measure the subjective. So from a scientific point of view, the subjective world doesn't seem real at all. They can't measure it. But everyone can experience the subjective world. And if we deny the subjective world, we deny our experience, which is totally crazy, isn't it? So the question then becomes, well, if the subjective world is real, is there part of the subjective world that is not real? Like if I believe in angels, for example. Well, so the question then becomes, who is the one? I mean, what part of you are you talking about? Because the thinking mind thinks. That's what it can do. Thinking mind can't have an experience. Experience belongs to another part of you. So the thinking mind is the one that kind of tends to capture us into thinking that the subjective world is not real, because the thinking mind can't have a subjective experience. The thinking mind can only think. And the thinking mind has a way of understanding the objective world, because it has, in a way, the thinking mind and objectivity kind of linked together. The thinking mind can measure, can move towards measuring. So we use the thinking mind in a way, to access a large part of the so-called objective world. But the subjective world is different. The thinking mind can't have an experience. The experience is happening inside, as it were, inside the body. And the body has different tools to access the subjective. We have feeling, for example. We have knowing. Knowing is not thinking. So we have knowing and we have feeling, and we can access the subjective world through those modalities. And from that perspective, the subjective world is real. I can feel, which is subjective. I can know things, which is also subjective. In fact, we call that intuition, when knowing flows into thinking. Then we're thinking, says, I've got a good idea, but where did it come from? So we have knowing and we have feeling. So the knowing and feeling access the subjective world. Thinking mind is a way to deal with the objective world. So So then, is an out-of-body experience real? Is a near-death experience real? Of course they're real. Those are the experiences of those people having those experiences. And we mustn't dismiss experiences, because actually, if you think about it, I often think that, well, if we take God, for example, I mean, there are a lot of people who believe in God. I always say, I'm not interested in what you believe in, because that's thinking. I want to know what your experience of God is, because that takes you into your feeling, knowing self. So don't tell me that you believe. It's okay to believe, but recognize where it's coming from. To actually experience God, we need to go into a different aspect of ourself, which is our feeling and knowing. Then it's different. Then I can ask you, well, what is your actual experience of the presence of God? Now, you could say, no, I don't have any experience, but let's start to play around with the word God, because the word God is unfortunate, because for a lot of people, the word God is kind of a bit objective, and therefore the thinking mind grabs hold of it. But let's break the word God down to different kind of words, like infinity, for example. Now, you could say, no, I don't understand infinity. Yeah, of course, you're using your thinking mind to understand infinity, and thinking can't, because it's limited. There's limitations around that. But infinity is not a thinking. Thinking can make a definition of it, but it can't have an experience of it. But with your knowing, feeling self, there you can go to and start to have an experience of infinity. And then you can actually say, yeah, I think I understand infinity. I actually can experience infinity. That sense of unlimitedness, that sense of boundarylessness, the sense of, the wonder of this magnificent universe that we live in. I can't think it. The thinking is much too limiting, but from my feeling self and my knowing self, I can access that. I can access infinity. Well, there's not much difference between infinity and God. So if God's a problem for you, use the word infinity. I like to use the word great mystery. I feel surrounded by great mystery, and I think that anybody who has any experience of living in this world, of walking in nature, of climbing mountains, of looking at a flower, must understand that there's a great mystery there. A beautiful, wonderful, great mystery. We all can experience that. We just we need to let go of the hold of the thinking mind, which says, no, that's nonsense. Drop down from here into your feeling self and your knowing self, and then you can experience something which is mysterious. And if you call that God, that would work. Works for me. So I don't mind what name I use, whether I use God or I use great mystery or I use infinity. These are words which take me into the experience. So then I don't have to believe in God. I can experience the presence of that great mystery all around me. So, so when this man was talking about his near-death experience, he used a number of words which resonated with me. The one was source, that he had been to source, he said. And he had tears in his eyes when he spoke about it. And I get that. I love the idea of source. There's something very deep that my feeling, knowing self can go to when somebody talks about source. And then he said, the other thing that he discovered is that there's only love. And he said that love is not an emotion, it's not a thought, it's an experience to be in love. And I get that. Have a good day.